Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to cover absolute value and absolute value equations. In a separate video I will also talk about absolute value inequalities, so look out for that. Alright, let's begin. When we talk about absolute value, we talk about the distance of any value from 0, the center of a number line. In this example here, I have a number line, and as you can see, I have 3 and -3 on either side of that 0. Now, if we're looking at how far each of these numbers is away from 0, the -3, which is here, is exactly 3 units away from 0. And the +3, which is there, is the same number of spaces away from 0. So regardless of the value you begin with, whether it's 3 or -3, we're talking about the same distance from 0. And remember, distance is a measurement. And as we all know, measurements occur only in positive values, at least for our purposes here. Okay, there's a way to represent the absolute value of a number from 0, and that's by using vertical bars. That's what I have right over here. And the bars simply mean a question about how far the number inside is away from 0. So if we look at an example over here, we have the absolute value of 3, but it's really a question, which is how far from 0 is 3? Now, if you remember the number line, the distance of 3 from 0 is exactly 3 units, which is why the answer turns out as +3, okay? And if we look at the other side of this, we have the absolute value of -3, and the question is still the same, which is how far is -3 from 0? And the answer to that is exactly what we got before, which is 3 steps away from 0. So as you can see, it doesn't matter what we begin with, the result is still the same. Now we can take this concept and extend it to more advanced examples. So let's go ahead and get into that right now. So when we don't have a number to look at inside, and instead we have a variable, the nature of the question is still the same, but the way we ask it is different. So in this example here, I have the absolute value of a variable is equal to 3. What it's really asking is what number or numbers are 3 spaces away from 0? So what numbers are exactly 3 spaces away from 0? And as we saw in the number line, the answers to that are both 3 and also -3. And both of them are important because if you only state one, you're giving only half the answer. Now there's a way to condense the answer, and that is by simply writing ±3. As a side note, we can only do this if the answer to the absolute value question are inverses of each other, like 3 and -3. But we cannot do that if the values are different numbers. Alright, now on to more advanced equations. So in this equation, we are faced with a similar question. The difference is the contents of the absolute value are not limited to just a variable or just a number. So as you can see, inside we have both a variable and a number. And even though this seems to change how everything works, it really doesn't, because the main focus is actually the number outside. And this number outside gives you the spaces from 0 that you currently are. So there's a value which is 4 spaces from 0. And if the question were, what number is 4 spaces away from 0? The answer becomes both a -4 and a +4. Both numbers are 4 spaces from 0. So what we do then is we grab the contents of the absolute value and we create an equation from it. So then we say, all right, well then what number -1 would make a -4, which is 4 from 0? And also, what number -1 would make a +4, which is also 4 spaces from 0? So now we have 2 separate equations that we can solve independently of each other. And we do this as follows. So we add 1 to both sides. We get x is equal to -3. Now this is our first answer. On the other side, we do the same thing. We add 1 to both sides. And we get x is equal to +5. That's our second answer. As you can see from our answers, compared to the first example where we had 3 and negative 3, here we have two different values that are not inverses of each other, negative 3 and positive 5. What each answer means is that if we were to replace the value of x, the x with the value that we got, we should see that what we get is the number 4, which represents 4 spaces from 0. Let's give that a try right now. So let's do a quick answer check here at the side. Answer check. So using the negative 3, we get negative 3 minus 1. And this makes a negative 4. And again, this question over here is how many spaces is that number from 0? And therefore the absolute value of negative 4 is 4. And look at that. So what that proves is that this answer, negative 3, is indeed one of the solutions, because when we use it, it gives us a value which is exactly 4 units from 0. And we can replicate this with the next answer we got, which was positive 5. So we'll do a second answer check. Answer check. So this will be absolute value of 5 minus 1. That's going to be absolute value of 4. And again, the absolute value of 4 is asking how far is this number from 0? The answer to that is positive 4 spaces. So we get this, and as you can see, it works out beautifully. And so what this means is that the number 5 is indeed another solution, because when we use it, it gives us a value which is also 4 units from 0. All right, let's go on to the next example. Here in example 2, we have not only something on the inside over here, but we also have something on the outside. Now, a rule of thumb is any value that is outside the absolute value must first be eliminated. All right, so let's take care of that first. To know what's going on out here, we have to simply use our equation solving skills. This is being connected by multiplication, and therefore the inverse of that would be division. So I'm going to divide by negative 6 on both sides. Remember not to do that on the inside. This is only exterior things. So these two eliminate. What I get is this with a positive 3 on the outside. So now that all numbers outside have been eliminated, I can then proceed to the next step, which is to ask, okay, so what number is exactly 3 spaces from 0? And the answer to that, as we saw earlier, is both 3 and negative 3. So what I do then is I split it into 2 parts. The first part will be negative 3, and the second part will be positive 3. And then I grab whatever's inside the absolute value and I build 2 equations from it. So what number plus 2 makes negative 3, and what number plus 2 makes positive 3. And then I go ahead and solve each one. So let's subtract 2. And I can do the same on the other side since the process is exactly the same. So the first answer I get is negative 5. And the second answer I get is positive 1. And that would be our 2 answers. We can verify it by plugging it in just like we did before and doing 2 separate answer checks, but you should definitely see that it works. All right, last example. And probably the most advanced for this video is this one here, example 3. Now, not only do I have things on the inside, and not only do I have things on the outside, but I have 2 terms on the outside. And if you remember the rule of thumb, we have to get rid of everything outside the absolute value first before we tackle whatever's on the inside. So first, I need to focus on this 6 and the positive 2. Now, if you think about the order of operations, addition and subtraction happens before multiplication. We're going to work with that same principle here, but in reverse. So because we are undoing things in order to solve, we have to first tackle the addition and subtraction part before we do the multiplication division part. So I'm going to undo the addition of 6 by doing subtraction properties on both sides. Okay, so what I get is the following. I still have this, so I'm going to just bring this down, but now I have 10 minus 6, which is 4. And now I can go ahead and take care of this too by remembering that this is being multiplied to the absolute value, and therefore, to undo that, I have to divide. So these disappear, and I have this remaining. On the left side, I have a divided by 3 minus 4, and on the right side, I get a 2. All right, so now that all values outside have been eliminated, I can now focus on the main question, which is, what number is exactly 2 units from 0? 2 units from 0. So that would be, if you're at 0 and you move 2 units to the right, you would end up at a positive 2. And if you were at 0 and you moved 2 units to the left, you would end up at a negative 2. So those are the 2 focus values. So what we do now is we take the contents, which are in here, and we build our equations. And on the right side, so a over 3 minus 4 equals positive 2. And now we solve each one independently. So if we do that, the first thing to do would be to add 4 to both sides. So plus 4, plus 4. Again, you can do it everywhere at once, just to save time. So what we get is a number divided by 3 is equal to positive 2. And a number divided by 3 is equal to positive 6. And now we undo division. So since we have division, we undo that by multiplication. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3. And again, you can do the same thing on both sides. And these divide, and you get your first answer, which is positive 6. And these divide, and you get your second answer, which is a is equal to positive 18. And that, my friends, is the end of our video. So both values, if substituted back into the original equation, which is way up there, if you were to substitute a 6, do the math on the left side, what you would get is a value that is exactly 10 spaces away from 0. And if you substitute the positive 18, the very same thing would happen. You get a value that is exactly 10 spaces away from 0. So I hope this video helped you to better understand how to work with absolute value and absolute value equations. Please stop by and leave a comment. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.